morning. I'm Carlicia Wright. I'm the director for the Office of Business Opportunity. And the Office of Business Opportunity, as most of you know, is responsible for facilitating the city's MWB program, among other things. As such, we're responsible for facilitating certification. We've got approximately 2,600 companies that are certified to do business with the City of Houston. And as you all are mostly you guys are all construction companies, most of those companies, almost half of those companies perform in construction and construction-related contracts. And so today we're going to talk specifically about the good faith efforts that are required when you're submitting at bid submission, as well as post-award good faith efforts. We've got our team, Ms. Marsha Murray, who's the Assistant Director for the Office of Business Opportunity. We have our Division Manager, Morris Scott. Morris Scott is the Division Manager for Contract Compliance. You interact with him and his team. He's accompanied by several of his contract compliance officers. If you guys can stand up and just wave. These are the individuals, these are some of the individuals that are out in the field on your contract, your job sites after the contract has actually been awarded. You'll also see them at the kickoff, the construction kickoff meetings. But before the contract is even awarded, there are efforts. There's a goal set on a contract. In our case, it's an MWB goal with SBE participation. Where you can substitute SBE participation, and we have a team called the Department Services Team. So they support internally the city departments in making sure the city understands how to set goals on contracts. We work with the departments to modify goals on contracts as necessary to reduce them from the citywide average. But we also work with contractors on good faith efforts at bid submission. And so you're submitting, when you're submitting your proposal or your bid at the time of award, you're submitting it with the good faith efforts or participation plan. And I have representing that team, Monica Dennis and LaTanya Bolden. You guys stand up for me? So that's the team. And so you'll be hearing from a variety of folks today. But again, welcome this is our third year since the program improvements in 2013 that we facilitated this. But we are available to assist. We want to make sure that we're answering your questions, not just today, but throughout the course of the year. If you have questions about good faith efforts, if you have questions and you need clarification on anything, all of these individuals, including myself, we'd like to offer our availability to you to answer those questions and address any concerns so that we can ensure that we've got a successful program. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Ms. Marsha Murray, who is the Assistant Director. She also oversees certification for those companies, but she oversees contract compliance in the Department Services team. She will kick off this presentation, and again, today we're going to cover both pre-award and post-award good faith efforts. Thank you.
Good morning. So we thought, let me just fast forward just a bit. As the director mentioned, we have been holding sessions on good faith efforts for this is the third session that we've had in the last 3 years. And today's session is actually going to be more of a refresher session on pre-award good faith efforts, because last year we actually delved into detail into requirements of the pre-award good faith efforts. We do want to address, some observations we've made this past fiscal year about challenges some contractors seem to still be having regarding good faith efforts. But the good news really is, since the program improvements in 2013, we have seen substantial improvements in the good faith effort submissions that have been made. And there are actually fewer and fewer good faith efforts being submitted. In the first year of the new requirement for the pre-bid good faith efforts process, the new requirement of submitting the participation plan, we saw that there were 29 submission of good faith efforts. About 70% of those submissions were actually valid good faith efforts. And this past year, we only saw 14 submission of good faith efforts, and 80% of those were actually valid good faith efforts that were approved only. We only had 3 denials. And so that's really indicating that a majority of the plans that are being submitted by the contracting community, by you all, are actually compliant participation plans. And when you do need to actually set forth your good faith efforts, they are actually compliant. So we want to, it would be great to reach perfection. So we'd like to just go through emphasize some of the areas that we think that we could maybe provide a bit more guidance and kind of show you how we assess your plans and what are some of the common challenges that we may see in some of the plans that turn out to be denied. So I will just briefly go over, again, I'm not going to go into detail the specifics of the pre-award good faith efforts policy. I'll go over generally good faith efforts, and I'll also introduce a companion guide that we've actually created about documentation that you should provide with your good faith efforts to support your efforts. That actually companion guide is born out of some feedback that we got from you over the last year, and definitely during the session last year, about specific documentation, a little bit more guidance on specific documentation that we're looking for. So it's a little one-pager that should help you, and that's going to actually be available on our website, and you have a copy in front of you today. And then the team will talk to you about enhancements that we've made to the 470, 471, and 472 forms. And again, those enhancements are really made to make sure that the information that we're requesting from you is clear, and that you can complete those forms with ease. And and I don't want to get ahead and I don't want to steal some of what my staff members are actually going to share, but it's really some of the changes that we made really came directly from the feedback that you have actually provided us with. And we'll talk a bit more about how we assess your participation plans, how we actually, and also look at some case studies of submissions that were made that were approved. We'll look at 1 approved case study and 1 denied good faith efforts. And I'll talk a little bit about the appeals process. I think every single denial that we had in fiscal year 15 has actually been appealed. And so there has been a modification in our appeals process, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And finally, I think this is the first time since I've been here for the last 3.5 years that we've had a larger session discussing post-award good faith efforts and the policy, the elements of the policy that applies to the efforts you make during the course of the contract to meet the goal. I know that Morris and his team at pre-bid conferences, pre-proposal conferences, talk about the requirements of good faith efforts in meeting the goal. But we're going to delve into that a little bit more today, and we're also going to kind of zoom in on commercial useful function and what that means in you actually meeting the contract goals. So let's get started. Okay, I think it's important to just emphasize that this program, the Minority Women Small Business Enterprise Program, is actually a program that is supported by an ordinance. So we don't just come up with the rules and policies surrounding the program. The City of Houston Code of Ordinance actually lays out how this program is supposed to actually function. And of course, the purpose of this program is to promote the growth and success of women, minority women in small business enterprises. And one of the ways that we do that is through goal-oriented contracts. And as you may recall, back in 2012, we had a disparity study published that laid out that, in fact, there continue to be disparities in the local marketplace and the participation of these types of companies. So that's why the city continues to support and emphasize the need to make sure that we recognize when there are opportunities on city contracts for subcontracting to minority women and small business enterprises. And again, we're going to emphasize it a number of times throughout the presentation today. The goals are not quotas. The standard for determining whether or not you've met the goal is your good faith efforts. So it's just really important to emphasize that, your good faith efforts. So if you don't hit the goal, you at least need to establish the efforts that you've made to try to actually meet the goal. And there's actually a formula that's involved in coming up with contract goals. We don't just pull goals out of the air. We use an industry-wide standard, which is there actually divisible work on a contract? What is that divisible work? And do we have certified firms who are actually available to do that divisible work? So if those factors are met, then we'll place a goal. We do factor in, historical participation in order to fine-tune the goal, because we don't want to put goals on contracts that you're not going to be able to meet. It makes no sense to do that. We do not want to set you up for failure, so we do consistently apply this formula to coming up with goals on contracts. So good faith efforts, as laid out in the policy, are steps taken to achieve the contract goal, which by their scope, their intensity, and their usefulness demonstrate your responsiveness to fulfill the business opportunity goals, objectives of the city, as well as in the post-award phase, the contractor's responsibility to put forth measures to meet or exceed contract goals throughout the duration of the contract. Simply put, good faith efforts is basically evidence of your genuine attempt to meet the contract goal. So as you should be familiar with if you've been doing work with the city for some time, is the good faith efforts policy is a part of document 808, which is a part of the solicitation document. So it's an appendix to document 808. I just included an image here of that document, but if you've been doing work with the city, you're familiar with it. If you're new to the city and want to do work with the city, that's where the good faith efforts policy. It's also on our website, of course, if you happen to lose a hard copy of it. So let's talk about pre-award good faith efforts. So this is the efforts that you're making before you submit your bid. So the policy outlines, and again, I won't go through in detail, but I just want to highlight the elements of the pre-award portion of the good faith efforts policy. So the policy outlines that attendance at pre-bid meetings is important. That's a part of your good faith efforts. And attendance at pre-bid meetings served, a couple of different purposes. If you happen to disagree with what the goal is, you think it's too high, I suppose you could think it's too low as well. But if you disagree with what the goal is, that's a forum in which to actually state that there are issues with the goal and what those issues are with the goal. Do not wait until you submit a good faith efforts plan to us to do that, because the team is going to be looking for evidence of you actually notifying the contracting department that there's a problem and making some efforts. That will bolster your submission of good faith efforts if we can see that there's actually a history in that procurement of you actually stating that the goal might be off. It's also, attend the pre-bid meeting is also an opportunity to meet certified firms that you may want to actually subcontract to. So we do, one of the first things that's listed in the policy is attending the pre-bid meeting. Outreach and advertisement. Certainly in your efforts to find certified firms to work on your contracts, reach out to organizations that actually support minority and women-focused organizations, see if they can actually assist you with your outreach efforts. And also another element that's listed in the good faith efforts policy is advertising in news media outlets that are focused on minority and women organizations. Now, you don't have to do every single step that I'm just going through the policy here, but these are options that you have to establish that you've done good faith efforts. Access and point of contact. Provide, another way in which we look at the efforts, we give you credit for your good faith efforts is, did you actually provide access to certified firms to the plan for that particular project? Did you designate someone as a point of contact that they could actually reach out to ask questions? Were you open about what the opportunities actually were on that particular project? Provide written notice to certified firms about what opportunities there are on that project. Solicit them through written solicitation, and provide them with information about the project. And that one-pager companion guide that I actually mentioned earlier actually outlines, what we're looking for on that documentation that you've provided to us to show that you've done this outreach and provided notice and solicited firms in a timely manner. Another element is enter into contracts provide us with contracts that you've actually entered into with certified firms to actually do the work, as well as notices of intent. And negotiate in good faith. The policy outlines, what that actually means, and the one-pager document that we've created also emphasizes what that actually looks like. What is negotiated in good faith with certified firms, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in a couple of slides. And designate work that will result in participation by certified firms. Again, we use a formula for arriving at a goal. So clearly the city has identified, if there's a goal in a contract, that there are opportunities there. Now, we're not going to tell you opportunities there for subcontracting. We're not going to tell you specifically what it is that you should subcontract out. That's up to you, which portion of the work that you want to subcontract out. But there are opportunities there, and designate. So to come back to us and say, no, there are absolutely no opportunities, you would really need to make a really compelling argument, and we need to have really missed some major things in our assessment of the goal in order for you to successfully actually make an argument that there really isn't any work to subcontract out. So designate portions of work in which it's likely that certified firms will be able to participate. And the explanation piece also goes back to negotiating in good faith. If you can provide to us, documentation that you've actually provided explanation to firms whose bids were rejected and why. And again, I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. And the last piece that's listed here, highlighted here, is new efforts. So yes, good faith efforts are assessed on a case-by-case basis. But we are actually going to be looking at your history of you as a contractor, your individual history of compliance. And have you actually been making those exact same efforts time and time again without actually your efforts resulting in meeting the goal or being able to put forth a good participation plan? If you're doing the same thing over and over again and you're not getting the desired result, that is actually going to be something that we're not going to view as good faith efforts. So I'm just highlighting a few things from the policy. Of course, this is not an exclusive, nor is it an exhaustive list. There are other things that you can certainly do to show your good faith efforts, but these are some of the common elements that's involved in assessing good faith efforts. We've gone through this before, and I failed to actually mention to you the more detailed presentation that we've had on good faith efforts last year, particularly pre-bid good faith efforts, is on our website. So you can certainly look at that at any point. The video from last year, if you'd like to sit through that video again, is also on our website, but it is available for you to kind of delve into more detail about the good faith efforts policy. But just as a reminder, establish relationships with MWSBEs in advance. So that when the projects actually come up, that you have a list of companies that you can actually use. And that ties in actually with the last bullet on the list, is review the capital improvement project in advance, and discuss projects and opportunities with MWSBEs. Just prepare yourself for these opportunities so you're not scrambling at the last minute. Ideally, that's the course to take. Like I mentioned earlier, subdivide the work. Make sure that there are manageable portions that you actually can subcontract out. Utilize our City of Houston directory to find your certified firms. Like the director mentioned, we increase our pool of certified firms every day. So we're up to 2,600 firms that are certified. When I first started 3.5 years ago, it was about 1,500. So there's definitely been a significant increase in the number of firms that are actually available out there. And if you're having problems actually finding a certified firm to do the work, reach out to us. We're here to provide assistance to you as needed. Like I mentioned before, directly solicit to the MWSBs. Make sure that's in a timely manner. The policy actually says that needs to happen in no less than 7 business days before the bid due date. And my team, before they submit anything to me for review and approval, they're making sure that that's the case. And those efforts will not be valid if they're not timely. Provide relevant bid and contract information, like I mentioned earlier, to the certified firms about the project. Advertise the opportunities. offer assistance to MWSBEs. The as needed, the policy actually outlines, you know, if there's bonding assistance, if that's the case in a project, certainly you can show that you've offered assistance in that way, in that category. Or there are other areas in which, you know, maybe a certified firm may need assistance. If you illustrate to us that you've actually made that offer, that's something that we would actually factor in. Building relationship, next bullet. You know, make sure that you're building relationships. Go back to subcontractors that you've used in the past. If they've done good work for you, I mean, there's no actually limitation for you to, that you can't reuse contractors that you have, subcontractors that you've used in the past. If no one responds, and I try to emphasize this in the one-pager, if no one responds to your email blast, and I think we've discussed in the last 2 sessions why email blast alone is just not sufficient. Pick up the phone and call. The policy actually requires that you follow up on your initial solicitations. So we're going to actually be looking for that. But again, we have seen improvements in the plan. So we're seeing, you know, you do these things, but we just want to, for those who haven't, you know, completely gotten it yet, we just want to emphasize. So the companion guide to the policy, the one-pager that you have. So what we did here was, so the policy at times lists specific documents that we'd be looking for, but there were some areas in which we just, you know, talked about the effort that we would be looking at, but we didn't necessarily lay out what kind of documentation, which is typical not to do in a policy, to lay out what kind of documentation we're looking at. But we thought to really further assist you, we wanted to just be able to give you a list and a guide of what we're actually looking for when we're assessing good faith efforts. So the one-pager actually focuses on 3 major areas. Direct solicitation of certified firms, outreach efforts and advertisement, and whether you negotiate in good faith. If you lose the copy that you have today, you can certainly go on our website to take a look at this document. We just quickly, on this one-pager, I talk about pre-bid attendance, the importance of that. We're actually going to be asking the department, in each and every case, we ask the department, did this contractor attend the pre-bid conference? And so we actually get the sign-in sheet. And so that's part of our evaluative process. The written solicitation, we're looking to make sure that you have included the relevant factors about the work in the written solicitation that you actually send out to contractors, a description of the specific work, the contact, a contact name to ask questions. We're looking for copies of your emails. I mean, sometimes you actually do provide, you know, a spreadsheet, you know, spreadsheets, you know, with the outreach that you've done. We're also looking for follow-up to that initial outreach as well. In the outreach and advertisement, we're looking for documentation of the name of the organization that you did outreach to, the person you contacted, their phone number, and the result of that contact. Advertisement, a copy of that advertisement, the date in which the advertisement was done, and negotiating in good faith, whether you negotiate in good faith with certified firms that were interested, and you didn't just reject the certified firms as unqualified without sound reasons based on thorough investigation and their capabilities. So provide us with a detailed reason why you rejected. We're not asking you necessarily for the price. And I know we had a discussion a couple of years ago about, you know, discomfort in actually revealing that kind of information, but provide us with an explanation as to why each firm was actually rejected. If that's the crux of your good faith efforts, that you didn't actually get, you know, a competitive price, and if price was not the reason, what was the reason for the rejection of the bid? This is an image of that companion guide. So at this point, I'm going to ask LaTanya Bolden to come up and kick off our presentation and talk about the enhancements, the portion of the presentation regarding enhancements that we've made to the various forms. LaTanya will cover the Form 470, which is the participation plan. She'll also just do a refresher on how we actually calculate the goal, how we assess whether or not on the participation plan, if you do not submit a 471 or 472, which are the good faith efforts documents, how are we actually assessing your goal compliance on those forms?
First of all, I want to say thank you to my assistant director for leading us into this discussion. That was a lot of excellent information to assist you with your filling out your forms. So now what we're going to talk about is we're going to discuss the document 470, which is your bidder's MWSBE participation plan. A bidder's MWSBE participation plan is one submitted at the time of the bid. Okay? And what this form does is it captures the MWSBE participation that the bidder commits to achieve for that particular contract. It's also used for determining whether a bidder has a plan to meet the goal. The first enhancement that has been done to the form was language was added to include good faith efforts requirement to provide supporting documentation, which you'll find on page 1. The second enhancement was language added to specify the city's separate contract goals and how to count MWSBE participation in order to meet the city's MWBE contract goal. If you look at the embrace box, red box, MBE and WBE goals are two separate contract goals. Any excess of one goal cannot be applied to meet another goal, and an SBE can be applied to the MBE and or WBE goals, but not to exceed 4%. This is very important because we're going to have a little quiz later. Okay, enhancement 3. Here we have an example added to specify how the MWBE participation percentage should be presented on the form. You'll find this on page 1 and page 2. Enhancement 4, we've added some selection boxes and language which was added to certification type of goal. One thing to remember, please, one MWSBE firm cannot be used to meet multiple goals. And if you take a look at the embrace box, here you can now check MBE, WBE, or SBE. Enhancement 5 is a table that was added to list bidders' participation plan total for MBE, WBE, and SBE. And that's been placed at the bottom. So now let's discuss assessing your MWSBE participation plan. Now, this is what you're going to do when you're trying to assess your plan. In other words, you're preparing your information to turn in. Achievement of the goal. MBE and WBE goals are separate subcontracting goals to be met how? Individually. Any excess of the MBE or WBE goal cannot be used to meet a deficient MBE or WBE goal. Only 4% SBE can be used to meet either the MBE and or WBE goal, but both cannot get 4% each. Supplies can contribute up to 50% of the contract goal. Supplies alone do not stimulate growth among MWSBEs. Therefore, a limit is required to achieve the program's goal. So what do we have? We have MBE goal plus WBE goal equals the contract goal. Only City of Houston certified firms may be used to meet either the MBE goal or WBE goal. You can visit the OBO website at www.houstontx.gov/OBO/ and click the link Certified Firm Directory to search for Houston certified vendors. Calculating participation. Now we're going to have a test. I want to make sure that you really heard everything that I just went over, because it's very important and will assist you in your filling out your forms. Okay, the contract goal has 13% MBE and 8% WBE. The bidder's participation numbers that were submitted: SBE 6%, MBE 9%, and WBE 8%. Does this plan meet the goal? Can't hear you? Yes. Yes. All right. Yes, this plan meets the goal. Why? These are separate goals to be met how? Individually. Goals are to be met individually. 4% of SBE may be used to meet the MBE and/or WBE goal. MBE 9% plus 4% from SBE is equal to what? 13%. WBE 8% plus 13% is equal to 21%. So yes, this does meet the goal. Example 2. Contract goal, 11% MBE and 8% WBE. The bidders submitted participation numbers, SBE 12%, MBE 6%, WBE 4%, making a total of 22%. Does this plan meet the goal? No. Correct. No, it does not. Why? These are separate goals to be met how? Individually. That's right. Correct. Only 4% of SBE may be used to meet either the MBE and/or WBE goal, not 4% for each. Okay? WBE 4% plus 4% from SBE equals to 8%. The remainder SBE percentage cannot be used for MBE goal calculation. Only the WBE goal is met. Example 3. The contract goal is 15% MBE and 5% WBE. The bidders submitted participation numbers, SBE 5%, MBE 13%, with 11% from suppliers and 2% for service. WBE 10%. Total bidder plan submitted, 28%. Does this plan meet the goal? Okay, let's see. Okay, let's just get to the bottom of this answer. Yes, it does. It meets the goal. Why? After assessment, 12% plus 3% equals 15% MBE plus 5% WBE gives us a total of 20%. Only up to 50% of the total goal may be calculated from suppliers. Here, only 10% of suppliers and the 2% of service will be calculated into the MBE goal for a total of 12% MBE participation. Up to 4% of SBE participation may be calculated into MBE and WBE participation. In this case, MBE may be increased to 16% after taking 3% of the allowed 4% SBE. Now I'm going a little easy on you guys because I can break this down pretty quick because I assess these, and so can my colleague Monica. But this is some very important information so you can kind of keep it when you're doing your forms. Now here's what you need to remember. Remember, bidders completely fill out the form 470 when? Prior to bid submission. Okay? Bidders must submit the 470 with the bid or else the bid is non-responsive. Bidders must fill in each box, how? Completely. They must what? Sign the document. Please. All information must be provided in order to be deemed responsive. Okay, so that's it. We're going straight into Monica, my colleague.
Thank you, LaTanya. At this portion of the presentation, I'm going to go over the good faith efforts, and this is the meat of the presentation that you are most interested in. As we've discussed previously, we've already talked about the program rules, the city's stance and policy. We've talked about what the good faith efforts policy looks like, the 470 form, which provides your MWSB participation plan to us, and how to count participation, which is all important in determining whether or not you need to supply and make a good faith efforts request to us when you're submitting your goal, submitting your bid to the city, rather. So do you think that we're all on the same page now as far as when we are going to be providing good faith efforts documentation to the city? Okay, good. So we're doing this at bid submission. So if you find that during your bidding that you can't meet the goal and you fall short of meeting the advertised contract goal, you must submit your good faith efforts on 2 documents. That's document 471 and 472. Document 471 will go into detail shortly. Document 472 will be followed after that in detail. And again, supporting documentation, which we've covered already. It's very crucial in making or breaking a good faith efforts request. Think of it as, you know, when I was in school, we had math and we had to do long division, and the teacher always said, show your work, show your work. Don't just put the answer down just because you know it. Well, this is, I think, the only time this rule falls into place. So again, show your work. So document 471, if you want to follow me, you can look at the forms and we'll go into the slide enhancements that we've done. The document 471 captures the efforts taken by you as the bidder in order to meet the advertised contract goal. The form is designed to capture information that you may have done in order to meet the goal. So those consist of providing the scope of work and the work elements that you were trying to subdivide and subcontract, the certified firms in those elements, in those areas and work areas that you were trying to subcontract to, whether they were, what their certification type was, whether they were women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, how much of SBEs did you try to use as well, and the method of contact you used to outreach to certified firms. Was it just one method? Did you fax, email, did you call? What were those dates? And what were the responses that you received in trying to reach those certified firms? And in the case that they were not used, what were those reasons? So the form is designed to capture this information and as a way to see what kind of efforts you made in trying to meet the goal. Again, just to emphasize, this is submitted at bid submission, which was different than a couple of years ago. So there were slight modifications done to this form. Document 471, if we look at the first paragraph, we had emphasized that the need for supporting documentation is necessary. So just it's serving as a reminder that not only when you are providing this information to us, to provide some support. So again, the guide that we have to use for supporting documentation would be very useful to get familiar with. That way you get consistent with what kind of information we're looking for as supporting documentation. The next enhancement, we simply underlined something to point out to you that if you do not meet the contract goal, a failure to not provide 471 may result in being non-responsive. So this is just, again, serving as a reminder to be aware of the importance of this form. And one last thing, like we did in the 470, we have this checkbox for you just for simplifying some of the important information that we need in order to just kind of guide everyone better and for simplicity. Now, many contractors like to use their own forms and their own spreadsheet as supporting documentation. Now, that's fine, you can do that. Remember to turn in the form, complete it, and you may submit the information on the spreadsheet with the relevant information that you have there that's also acceptable too. So that's just something that you may do as well. So now we'll discuss 472. Again, this is going to accompany your 471 and your 470. This is again at bid submission, and this is different than the 471 in that this captures efforts taken beyond what's described in the 471. So if there's anything else that was not captured in that form that you had done to try to meet the goal, then that's something that you can provide an information to us here on this form. There's also an opportunity for you to state any kind of justification as to why you cannot meet the goal. So this is what this form captures and what it illustrates and how it's different from the 471. Slight enhancements again were made to this form. As a reminder, we saw that many contractors that are bidding overutilize the SBE in trying to meet the goal. They over-relied on it, and so we just pointed out as a reminder as you're putting these forms together, just remember only 4% is allowed, a maximum of 4% is allowed. So we place that on there for you as a reminder. Again, to follow the rest of the forms that we've done, we've also provided an enhancement just stating again the importance of providing supporting documentation. And the last enhancement, we just changed some of the wording. Previously, we had bidder and buy, and we specified we want the company representative and the company name as well that we can contact in the event we need to. So this is some important information, and we found that bidders have gotten a lot better at this. So you either meet the contract goal, and if you do, this would be provided in, you just need to provide one form, that's document 470. If you cannot meet the goal and you fall short, you'd be providing 470, 471, 472, all at bid submission, and your supporting documentation. Keep in mind, if you haven't experienced this already, we cannot accept any kind of supporting documentation after you submit your bid. So it's important to provide that at bid submission, and you will only be contacted by the Office of Business Opportunity in the event that we have some clarification that we need from you. And this is done on a case-by-case basis, and we'll be in contact in the event that there's something unclear to us. So now that we have covered many aspects of this presentation, we're going to put it into use in the form of a case study. The case study is going to illustrate what exactly a bidder did when they provided an approved good faith effort and what a bidder did when they provided a good faith efforts request that was denied. So this could give you some perspective what to look at and the quality of one versus another. So good faith efforts generally consist of completed documents, evidence of their good faith efforts with supporting documentation. So here's our first case study. So it's a little convoluted, but again, we're going to go over this. It's good to go into it a bit in detail just so we can walk through this together and see what a good approved good faith effort looks like. So in this case, we have a plant work project with a 13% MBE goal and a 7% WBE goal. The bidder provided a participation plan of 13.82% MBE, 0% for the WBE, and 0.91% for the SBE. Now, when we assess the plan, and when the bidder assessed the plan, they actually found that they did not, in fact, meet the goal. The overage, the 0.82% overage of the MBE goal does not apply towards any deficit goal. So you can't apply it to the MBE goal. It doesn't count towards any total goal. So when you assess the plan, they only met the 13% MBE goal. Now, because of the allowed 4% SBE, you can substitute a deficit goal. So in this case, the bidder could substitute the 0.91% SBE, giving the WBE goal 0.91%. Despite the substitution, the WBE goal was still short, and which resulted in the WBE goal not met by 6.9%. 6.09%. So the bidder was aware that they were not able to meet the goal, and they provided the information that we needed, a good faith efforts request, and they provided document 470, 471, and 472. They also provided an attachment, so you can make this case on the 472, but they provided a document to state why they couldn't meet the goal as well. So it was just an extension of 472. They also provided documentation that supported the SBEs contacted, the certification type in which they were going to use to meet the goal, the work capabilities of the certified firms, the scope of work that they were intended to use the certified firms for. They provided, the documentation they provided stated the dates of contact for the faxes that they sent out, the emails that they sent out, and also the telephone calls that they provided for follow-up. So they went beyond the initial solicitation. The results of contact that they made with the certified firms was also listed. The fax log and email log submissions, the proof of that was also provided, and a sample bid invitation that they sent to the certified firms, which provided the project information, the bid date, linked to the plans, who the person is as their point of contact in the event that there are questions by the certified firms, that they were able to demonstrate that simply by providing their bid invitation that they submitted. And also there was advertisement in news media and organizations that they did to certified minority-owned and women-owned organizations, so that was also done, and they provided proof of those advertising. So after the Department Services Unit of the Office of Business Opportunity evaluated and verified the details, we found that indeed this bidder made a good faith effort. So despite their outreach, despite the many forms that they solicited, the WBE specifically, they made a good faith effort to meet the goal. So because of that, we were able to follow the good faith efforts policy, and this bidder was able to demonstrate many elements of the good faith efforts policy that allowed them to receive an approved good faith effort. So, you know, this is following. So they not only subdivided the work, they provided a point of contact to the certified firms to make available, in the event that there are questions, access to the plans, links. They gave them all the project information. They notified a reasonable number of firms as well. They followed up with certified firms. They solicited firms in a timely manner, which is very important. If you're reaching out to firms 10 days in advance versus 2 days in advance, there's a big difference when you're notifying certified firms and soliciting them for bids. The policy states no less than 7 business days. And they negotiated in good faith effort. So in case you're wondering what that looks like, the bidder provided a MWSBE plan of 13.91%. So there was effort. Their efforts yielded in some sort of participation. So, and once we requested the city's pre-bid meeting, we found, in fact, that they did attend the meeting. So all these efforts and elements that we have described here shows what an approved good faith effort looks like. So now we're going to move on to what a denied good faith effort looks like. We've actually seen examples of this in some good faith efforts requests, and this alone is not going to serve as a reason to why you can't meet the goal. Not enough visibility on the job, the contractor is choosing to self-perform the work, there's not enough low MWBE bids, the nature of the work is specialty, or I ran out of time and I couldn't fill out the information. We have seen that before. So one thing that we've talked about already is in the event that there are some challenges in meeting the goal for a particular project, it is important to raise this information while you're bidding the project and before the job bids. The city has processes in place in order to change a goal in the event that there's something wrong. So we encourage you to talk about this prior to your bid submission. The pre-bid meeting is a perfect place to do it. You've got clarifications that you can ask, requests for information, lots of things that you can do as your outlet to make sure the goal is where it is, and if there's something that we need to look at, it has to be done prior. Making the case at good faith efforts is not the time, as we've already stated. So let's get into the second case study. We have a large water line project, and there was an advertised contract goal of 12% MBE, 7% WBE. The bidder provided a participation plan of 2.34% MBE, 0.08 WBE, and 1.07% SBE. When the bidder assessed the plan and when we confirmed that the bidder's the bidder applied the 1.0% SBE to the MBE, we found that it was 3.41%, and the WBE remained unchanged at 0.08%. So both the MBE goal and the WBE goal were both unmet. The bidder did provide the information on the forms. It was the 470, 471, and 472. The bidder provided the only information that we were able to get from that good faith efforts was that they contacted certified firms. It provided the certified firms that were contacted and the contact details, so the address, name, and phone number, their certification type, whether they were an MBE, SBE, or WBE, and their work capabilities, so what were they certified in. When Department Services evaluated and the documentation and investigated the details, we found that there were elements that the bidder was able to meet. They did subcontract the work. They did show that there was, that they tried to subcontract it out in different scopes in order to meet the goal. They did have some participation on the plan, so they negotiated in good faith with a 3.49% participation plan. They stated that they solicited in the news media and to organizations focused towards minority and women, and they did send this information to a big pool of certified firms. So we were able, that directly reflects the good faith efforts policy. But despite that, the good faith effort was not established. Again, the importance, we didn't know how the certified firms were contacted or if they were contacted. We didn't know when they were contacted. We didn't know what the results of contact were. We didn't know the same information for the organizations and associations that were submitted. So again, those are very key factors in determining a good faith efforts. And there was no documentation to support that as well. So when we rendered a decision, we found that this in fact was a denial because we were not able to establish any of the elements in the good faith efforts policy. Again, media and organizations were not notified in a timely manner. We were not able to substantiate that. How they were contacted, whether or not they were notified in a timely manner again, and the bidder also did not attend the pre-bid meeting as well. So when we requested that documentation, they did not show up. We hope that this was able to illustrate this information to you, and now I'm going to pass this on to the Assistant Director, Marcia Murray, to go over the appeals process.
Okay, so appealing a good faith efforts denial. So once the team, the Department Services team, and I'll talk about pre-award and post-award denials, once the team has done their investigation and they've compiled all the information and made their recommendation, I then actually review everything that's submitted. And of course, they'll reach out to you with questions that I may have if I need additional information in order to make a final determination. So once a final determination is made, if that determination is made to deny your pre-award good faith efforts, then we will, and it's important that we have your email information, we will notify you via email. You receive a letter from us signed by me, letting you know that your good faith efforts was denied and that you can submit a written request to appeal this denial within 3 business days of the date of that letter to the director. That is the next layer of review. So in last year, prior to the change in our appeals policy,